God bless you. Today we're continuing in 1 Kings in the New Jerusalem Holy Bible, and we are in chapter 18, verse 41 in the book of 1 Kings. The drought ends. Elijah said to Ahab, "Go back now, eat and drink, for I hear the approaching sound of rain." While Ahab went back to eat and drink, Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel and bowed down to the ground, putting his face between his knees. "Now go up," he told his servant, "and look out to sea." He went up and looked. "There is nothing at all," he said. 7 times Elijah told him to go back. The 7th time the servant said, "Now there is a cloud, small as a man's hand, rising from the sea." Elijah said, "Go and say to Ahab, harness the chariot and go down before the rain stops you." And with that the sky grew dark with clouds and storm, and rain fell in torrents. Ahab mounted his chariot and made for Jezreel. But the hand of Yahweh had come on Elijah, and hitching up his clothes, he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. Part B. Elijah at Horeb. The journey to Horeb, chapter 19. When Ahab told Jezebel everything that Elijah had done, and how he had put all the prophets to the sword, Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods bring unnameable ills on me, and worse ills too, if by this time tomorrow I have not made your life like the life of one of theirs." He was afraid and fled for his life. He came to Beersheba, a town of Judah, where he left his servant. He himself went on into the desert, a day's journey, and sitting under a furze bush, wished he were dead. "Yahweh," he said, "I have had enough. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down and went to sleep. Then all of a sudden an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked round, and there was at his head was a scone baked on hot stones, and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. But the angel of Yahweh came back a 2nd time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, or the journey will be too long for you." So he got up and ate and drank, and strengthened by that food that he walked for 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, God's mountain. The encounter with God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. Then the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I am full of jealous zeal for Yahweh Sabaoth, because the Israelites have abandoned your covenant, have torn down your altars, and put your prophets to the sword. I am the only one left, and now they want to kill me." Then he was told, "Go out and stand on the mountain before Yahweh." For at that moment Yahweh was going by. A mighty hurricane split the mountain and shattered the rocks before Yahweh. But Yahweh was not in the hurricane. And after the hurricane, an earthquake. But Yahweh was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire. But Yahweh was not in the fire. And after the fire, a light murmuring sound. And when Elijah heard this, he covered his face with his cloak, and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then came a voice to him, which said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I am full of jealous zeal for Yahweh, God Sabaoth, because the Israelites have abandoned your covenant, have torn down your altars, and put your prophets to the sword. I am the only one left, and now they want to kill me." "Go," Yahweh said. "Go back by the same way to the desert of Damascus. You must go and anoint Hazael as king of Aram. You must anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, as king of Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah, as prophet to succeed you. Anyone who escapes the sword of Hazael will be put to death by Jehu, and anyone who escapes the sword of Jehu will be put to death by Elisha. But I shall spare 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bent before Baal, all the mouths that have not kissed him." The call of Elijah. Leaving there, he came on Elijah, son of Shaphat, as he was plowing behind 12 yoke of oxen, he himself being with the 12. Elijah passed near to him and threw his cloak over him. Elisha left his oxen and ran after Elijah. "Let me kiss my father and my mother, then I will follow you," he said. Elijah answered, Go back, for have I done anything to you?" Elisha turned away, took a yoke of oxen, and slaughtered them. He used the oxen's tackle for cooking the meat, which he gave to the people to eat. He then arose and, following Elijah, became his servant. Section C, the Armenian Wars. The Siege of Samaria. Chapter 20. Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, mustered his whole army. 32 kings were with him, and horses and chariots, and marched on Samaria, to besiege it and take it by assault. He sent his messengers into the city of Ahab, king of Israel, to tell him, Ben-Hadad says this, "Your silver and gold are mine. Your wives and children remain yours." The king of Israel replied, "As you command, my lord king. Myself and all I have are yours." The messengers came again. This time they said, Ben-Hadad says this, "I have already sent you an order to hand over your silver and your gold, your wives and your children. But I swear this time tomorrow I shall send my servants to ransack your house and your servants' houses and lay hands on everything that they value and take it away." The king of Israel summoned all the elders of the country and said, "You can clearly see how this man intends to ruin us. He has already demanded my wives and my children, although I have not refused him by my silver and gold." All the elders and all the people said, "Take no notice, do not consent." So he gave this answer to Ben-Hadad's messengers, "Say to my lord the king, all you first required of your servant I will do, but this I cannot do." And the messengers went back with the answer. Ben-Hadad then sent him the following message, "May the gods bring unnameable ills on me, and worse ills too, if there be enough dust in Samaria for each of my followers to have a handful." But the king of Israel returned this answer, "Say, the man who puts on his armor is not the one to boast, but the man who takes it off." When Ben-Hadad heard this message, he was under the awnings drinking with the kings. He gave orders to his servants, "Take up position," and they took up their positions against the city. Victory for Israel. A prophet then arrived, looking for Ahab, king of Israel. Yahweh says this, he said, "You have seen this huge army. This very day I shall deliver it into your hands, and you will know that I am Yahweh." "By whose means?" Ahab asked. The prophet replied, "Yahweh says this, by means of the guards of the district governors." "Who will coordinate the attack?" Ahab asked. "You will," the prophet replied. So Ahab inspected the guards of the district governors. There were 232. After these he reviewed the army, all the Israelites. There were 7,000. They made a sortie at midday. When Ben-Hadad was drinking himself senseless under the awnings, he and his 32 kings who were allies, the guards of the district governors, led the sortie. A report was made to Ben-Hadad. "Some men have come out of Samaria," he said. "If they come out for peace, take them alive. If they come out for war, take them alive too." So they made a sortie from the city, the district governor's guards, and behind them the army, and each struck down his man. Aram took to flight, and Israel pursued. Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, escaped on horseback. The king of Israel then advanced, capturing horses and chariots and inflicting a great deal on Aram. Respite. The prophet then went to the king of Israel and said, "Now is the time to be resolute and think carefully about what you should do. For at the turn of the year, the king of Aram will march against you." The servants of the king of Aram said to him, "Their gods are gods of the mountains. That is why they have proved stronger than we are. But if we fight them on level ground, we shall certainly beat them. This is what we must do. Remove all these kings from their commands and appoint professional soldiers in their place. You, for your part, must recruit an army as large as the one which deserted you, with as many horses and as many chariots. Then if we fight them on level ground, we shall certainly beat them." He listened to their advice and acted accordingly. The victory of Aphek. At the turn of the year, Ben-Hadad mustered the Arameans and marched on Aphek to fight Israel. The Israelites were already immobilized and provisioned and marched out to meet them. Encamped opposite them, the Israelites looked like 2 herds of goats, whereas the Arameans filled the countryside. The man of God then went to the king of Israel and said, "Yahweh says this, since Aram has said that Yahweh is a God of the mountains and not a God of the plains, I shall put the whole of this huge army into your power, and you will know that I am Yahweh." For 7 days they were encamped opposite each other. On the 7th day, battle was joined, and Israelites slaughtered the Arameans, 100,000 foot soldiers in one day. The rest fled to Aphek, into the citadel, but the city walls collapsed on 27,000 of the survivors. Then Ben-Hadad had fled and taken refuge in an inner room inside the citadel. "Look," his servants said to him, "we have heard that the kings of Israel are faithful and kind kings. Let us put sackcloth around our waist and cords around our heads, and go out to the king of Israel. Perhaps he will spare your life." So they wrapped sackcloth round their waist and put cords round their heads, and went to the king of Israel and said, "Your servant Ben-Hadad says, 'Spare my life.'" "So he is still alive?" he replied. "He is my brother." The men took this for a good omen and quickly seized on his words. Yes, they said. Ben-Hadad is your brother. Ahab said, go and fetch him. Then Ben-Hadad came out to him, and Ahab made him get up into his chariot. Ben-Hadad said, I shall restore the towns which my father took from your father, and you may set up a trading quarter for yourself in Damascus, as my father did in Samaria. With a treaty, Ahab said, I shall set you free. Granting him a treaty, Ahab let him go. And we will pick up in chapter 20, verse 35. Tomorrow, God willing. And as always, I love you.